Our first example today is Patrick Bet-David. Patrick Bet-David is, we've brought him up a bunch of times. He's from Valuetainment. He's launched a media agency called Valuetainment, has an amazing podcast called PBD podcast, talks about business and finance and political things. And he has, a lot of really, really broad spectrum of visitors that come in. He recently did an interview. Well, he's doing a lot of stuff at the moment promoting his book. His book is called Choose Your Enemies Wisely. And he recently did this interview with Grant Cardone. I sound a little bit American when I said that, Grant Cardone. And he kind of mentioned a little bit about his book. And then I went to do a little bit of research. I'm looking forward to coming out. Now, we will probably do a full episode, maybe discussing this book once both Dr. Rod and I have had a chance to read it. Well, I'll listen to it. But it's one of those. I think that we'll do a book club or something on it, Dr. Rod. I think that'll be really good. But there's another video in which we've linked below also, where he goes through his 10 enemies that should motivate you. And part of his challenge I realized that I'm talking about sharing my screen and I have not shared my screen yet. Sorry, Yash. That is my fault. Hold on a second. There we go. I saw Yash. I saw you put Yash is our production guy. I saw him cover it up by bringing something on the screen. I'm like, oh, it is showing, but it was different. So he has this video where he talks through his 10 enemies that should motivate you, and he just talks about that as a leader, we should actually use enemies as a fuel to drive our success. And he goes through 10 different types of leaders or types of enemies that you should use to motivate you. And he has a really good, go and watch the video. He tells some really good stories in there. And there's some great examples of how you can use enemies as motivation. So Dr. Rob, our first way in which we should handle enemies or control our enemies and not let them control us is use them as motivation. So, what's your thoughts on this theory?
Look, it's a new idea to me. No doubt others have had it in the past, but I think one of the exciting things about it is not saying get back at your enemies, except by being successful yourself. So he's really saying don't let your enemies keep you down, but use them to motivate you to success, motivate you to do well. And I was enthralled by the interview, and I'm going to buy the book. It'll be published in about a month, and I think it's going to throw some new light on the management of businesses, especially the establishment of new businesses. And the title in some ways is a little bit misleading. This is about building a successful business. And I think the way in which he talks about using enemies as motivators, but not motivators for hatred or for payback, but motivators toward your own success.
Yeah, let it fuel you, because too often we can let those haters or the enemies really crush our spirit and really get us down. I know, like, when I go through problems, sometimes my mind is my greatest tool, but it's also my greatest enemy. It can cause me to overthink things. It can cause me to spiral a little bit. Oh, this person should have done that. They should have done this, and they said this, and they did that. And as you know, you've been helping me through some of my personal challenges that I've been having lately, and that's actually been I have been using it as an excuse. Now, here's the thing: if you go through some tough things and you go through some challenges, it's not like you shouldn't. This is kind of one thing that I kind of want to emphasize is you shouldn't expect that No one expects you, if you're going through a tough challenge, to instantly turn that into success. Well, I need to use this as fuel to get me through. One thing that I actually talk about a lot with my clients that are going through challenges is be realistic. Take a real understanding of what your situation is right now. Take account of where you're at right now, because if you're going through a tough time, maybe it's not time to start taking on new challenges and try to build and try to succeed and try to take over the world. No, recognize that, you know what? I only have the emotional energy. Like so, for example, I have this one thing that, as I mentioned, I've been going through some personal challenges lately that Dr. Rod and my team have been helping me through. And one of the things that I've been wanting to do this year is move out of my apartment that I live here and try to find another apartment. And I was trying to do it in the middle of dealing with all these personal challenges. And then I realized, hold on a second, yeah, I do want to move out, but I don't have the emotional capacity, because we all know moving, even if you pay someone else to move and everything like that, there's still the emotional energy of and the time of looking for a new place and going and doing inspections and then applying for places, and then if you get it, then you got to find a move list, you got to pack things up, you got to there's a lot of emotional and time, like emotional energy and time that's put into moving. And so I realized, hold on a second, I'm going through this other challenge that I need to focus my energy on and my emotions on. Let me deal with that first, get that done out of the way. Let me recover emotionally from that. And then I can consider taking on a new challenge and then moving forward and moving out or whatever. But I think that's kind of like just a little bit of not a caveat. Let's say an asterisk to this, because I think that there is way too much done around the personal development space, etc., that kind of says, you need to take on the world and you need to like keep charging forward no matter what you're facing. You like, yes, you need to do that, but you also need you need to take an audit, I suppose, and really analyze, do I have the energy for this? No, I don't. Let me deal with this first, and then afterwards, then let's use that for fuel to drive me forward. So it's not about jumping straight from a challenge to success. It's get through your thing, get through your challenge, recover, recoup, like do everything you need to. I actually just mentioned to Dr. Rod, like, this weekend I'm going away to the mountains by myself. I'm just going away, taking some time out just to connect into nature, get closer with God again, like just recover, because I need to just get away. I live in a big city. It's all craziness. I just need to get out, get to nature, get back to God, recover, so that I can move on to the recharge and then get on to the next step. But Dr. Rod, actually, do you have anything to add to my little rant that I just said?
Well, the thought that was running through my head as you were sharing there was that there are numerous stressors in our lives. Many of them we can actually manage, some of them simply by postponing them. And too much stress will cause us all kinds of problems, not the least of which is that it will impair our capacity to make rational decisions. Yeah. So, we can bear a certain load of stress, both good stress and bad stress, but we can't bear even too much good stress, because it'll kind of tip us over into the bad stress area. So to the extent that we're able to, we do need to manage the stressors in our life. And sometimes, as you did, you postponed a decision and an action, and I think that's very wise. So leaders do need to bear that in mind, that they can become overstressed even when all of their stressors are producing that positive eustress, the good stress. Mm-hmm. Too much stress of either kind can do us a lot of damage. So, we do need to manage it. It's an important skill for us to develop as leaders.
Yeah, and as you say that, the picture that comes to mind is that performance pressure bell curve. right? We teach this all the time in our
That's
free
it, yep.
leadership development program. Yes, shameless plug. Check out the link in the description. So there's this simple bell curve, right? That it's got the amount of pressure is along the bottom, and your performance is then on the vertical. And so it's just quite simply, and Yash is in the background trying to quickly find this so he can share it up on the screen. Good work, Yash. So it's just a performance pressure bell curve. That this works, this is important for us as leaders, but also about the pressure that we apply to our team as well. This is a bit of a side, rant that we've just found, detour that we've found ourselves on, but there's always a good lesson in it. But we need to be well aware of the pressure we put on ourselves and the pressure we put on our teams, because there is this happy medium. You can see that big happy, smiley face. There is a certain point where there is a lot of pressure, but there's also a lot of performance. But if you add more pressure, then obviously there is going to be a diminished returns in performance. And also, if there's not enough pressure, we all know that sometimes, and I suppose this is actually what PBD is talking about here, is sometimes we need something that's driving some sort of a pressure, and maybe it's an internal thing of using the fuel of someone that's hurt us, whether it be an ex or a business partner or some trolls on the internet or whatever it might be. We need to use that to add that little bit more pressure to ourselves to perform at our peak. But understand that there is a tipping point where we can actually perform worse if there's too much pressure. And we need to know that for ourselves, but also for our team. Because I think that leaders just think, I put more pressure and they'll perform better. No, that's not the right. We've seen people have burnout. We've seen people, that just just crumble under pressure. And leaders go, well, it was their problem. They just couldn't perform. No, you as a leader put too much pressure on them. You need to know your team. You need to understand your team so that they can perform. You can find the right amount of pressure, because that bell curve is just a generic line. It moves for each person. I am the sort of person that I perform better under a lot more pressure. And so my curve is a little bit more that way, right, than the other. I know some people that their performance is better with really low pressure, but the bell curve is still relevant. And it's our responsibility as leaders to make sure that we understand each individual person that we're leading to where their level of performance is, and we understand us as well. Dr. Rod, sorry, too many rants today.
That's all right. It's your podcast. You can rant as often as you like.
It's our podcast, Dr. Rod. It's ours. Yours also. Look, I don't know whether you can tell, but this week I am sick. I've got a bit of a head cold, and I told Dr. Rod that he's going to have to carry it a little bit, and I'm doing more talking today than I normally do. But let's move on and talk about, okay, so how do we actually use those people for motivation? Because one key thing you mentioned before is not doing anything vengeful. Like we're not doing this, we're not turning around to get back at those people, but we're using this for an internal thing to drive and motivate us. How do we use that in a healthy way?
Well, maybe I could give you a little example. I remember many years ago now, when I was still a school child, I would have been about 15 at the time, so I suppose I was a teenager, but I remember that one of our teachers asked the whole class to sort of form a semicircle, and he went around the class and wanted to know what we wanted to do when we sort of left school. And it got to my turn. We went through all the builders, the butchers, the candlestick makers and all that sort of thing, and got to me and I said, I want to become an academic, sir. And I don't know how many of our watchers will know the word guffaw, but it's a sort of deep, guttural laugh, a laugh of great derision. Okay. Well, he guffawed at my ambition to become an academic. And I ended up becoming a professor in a university. So I didn't let that hold me back.
An
Well,
academic.
I'm
you
now
are
an emeritus
academic
professor.
of an academics.
So, I didn't let that hold me back. Now, it could have, because I've come across many, many people who have had someone say something like that to them or laugh at their ambition. And that has actually caused them to miss out altogether.
Yeah.
And it breaks my heart when that happens. So, in a sense, he was my enemy because he was coming between me and the realisation of my ambition and what God's destiny was for me.
Yeah.
But I didn't let that happen, and I don't know whether it spurred me on to work hard as a school kid. I can remember spending many Sundays sitting outside in the sun so I could get a suntan like everybody else in the class with a card table and studying. I used to study many, many hours every day. Throughout university, I never worked less than about 65 hours a week, often at least 100 hours a week. So it really spurred me on to working hard. I used to call Friday night my day off. And I used to go to the pub on a Friday night. That was my day off. Sunday was an easy day. I used to just edit my essays and so on a Sunday, so it wasn't too bad. And then I used to go to bed at about 6 o'clock on a Sunday night and listen to country music. So there you go. That'll cause a few of our fans to disappear. But in the end, see, I've often thought back on that day how, and look, I've never even felt any animosity towards that man. I didn't even think of going there. But I just thought, you know what? I'm going to work and I will achieve. And the only downside of that is that I have no sympathy whatsoever for people who tell me how hard they're working until they can demonstrate they're working 60 or 70 hours a week.
Yeah, I'm the same. I talk to people and they turn around to me like, oh, I'm so tired. I'm just working so much and I'm not getting... okay, all right, tell me about your day. And they've just got the easiest day.
I know, absolutely.
Yeah. I currently work in 3 different time zones. I have a 3-year-old boy. Don't talk to me about that. But I think that there's with us using this as motivation. I think for me, I want to kind of emphasize that there's 2 different types of motivation. If we're going to talk about motivation, there's 2 different types of motivation, and this was a theory that I studied at university when I studied sports psychology, and it's called self-determination theory. And there's 2 different types of motivation. There's intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is the one that's inside, that drives you, the vision, the purpose, the goals, all those sorts of things. The extrinsic are the rewards, like the trophies, the money, the fame, the whatever it may be. And while most people focus on the extrinsic motivation, what all the studies showed is it was only the intrinsic motivation that would actually drive people through major obstacles. So being able to actually push yourself through those rainy days, push yourself through an injury, push yourself through haters and stuff, that's intrinsic motivation. And I think that that's what PBD is talking about here is give yourself some fuel. Like, yes, you can go for the money and the fame and the accolades and all that sort of stuff, but you need to have something internal as well. And that's what I think this does, is it drives something internally of like, I want to prove this as an internal thing. And you need to focus on it being an internal thing, not I'm just going to prove them wrong, because that's still an extrinsic thing. It must be intrinsic of like, I'm going to do this because I believe in myself. And one other thing that I kind of want to jump on with that you mentioned, Dr. Rod, is, it was your purpose. If you had have listened to that person who scoffed at you, or what was that type of laugh that you said?
It's called guffaw. You should Google it. It's a beautiful word. It's a beautiful word.
Guffaw.
I've only ever used it in connection with that one incident, by the way. No one has ever guffawed at me since.
Well, let's hope that we can create some guffaw moments between us. So So you mentioned that if you had actually listened to him, you would have actually been discouraged and maybe not lived out your purpose. And I think that that's the key. With all these things we're talking about, like, yeah, use those things. And so many people will turn around and like, I'm going to prove that to my ex or to my family or whatever. And they go out and try to chase something. They try to chase success, but they're not trying to chase their purpose. So yes, you can use these people to motivate you, to drive you to achieve your purpose, yes, but don't use it just to drive towards success or just try to prove them wrong, because you're never going to get there, or you might get there, but it will be unfulfilled. But if you genuinely know what your purpose is, your God-given calling and what he has anointed you to do, then yes, use it as internal motivation to drive you towards your purpose, but don't just try to chase an empty thing just to prove people wrong. Anything more for you to add with that, Dr. Rod?
Well, let me tell you something. I did learn something from Patrick Bet-David, and,
Yes.
and I loved it. I really loved it because he was asked this question about what is the biggest thing that stops you? And he took a little while to answer it, but he said something. I won't repeat it because he used the vernacular, which we probably wouldn't use on our show. But he said, "Don't listen to the BS."
Yep.
And what he was actually saying was, you know what? Don't listen to the flatterers. Don't listen to the flatterers.
Yep.
And I think he put his finger on something which is really, really important for our development as leaders. You know, don't look for the accolades, because a lot of those accolades, they'll be false. A lot of the flattery, it's going to be false. It's coming from people who don't really care about you. They don't really care about your destiny. They're not even necessarily on board with your purpose. They're not necessarily committed to seeing you get to your purpose. And he tells the story of him as a 21-year-old. He was very successful working in a business. I don't know what he did, but I'm guessing he must have been in sales, because that's basically the only way a 21-year-old could have made a lot of money back then, before the digital age. But he lost it all. And he no longer had his big flashy car, and he's driving around, he said, in a little Ford. And all of a sudden he had no friends. There was nobody flattering him anymore. And so he said, don't listen to them. And I think that's really, really good advice. Don't listen to the flatterers. You know, you need to pay much more attention to what's going on inside, actually, because so often it's actually the voice of God speaking to you. But anyway, long story short, I'm really looking forward to reading his book. And as you say, I think it'd be great if once we both have an opportunity to go through that book, that we chat about it on the podcast. I think he's going to shift our thinking about how to succeed in business. And so I'm really looking forward to that book very much.
I agree. Actually, there's one last thing that he mentioned in this interview that I thought was actually, it has nothing to do with our topic, but I just thought it was a really good statement that I think that we should take away as leaders. Is my goal is to be net positive on society. And Grant Cardone was like, yeah, you obviously are successful. You're not going to be a burden on society. It really spoke to me, because it's like, well, we as leaders definitely should make sure that we are the ones that are investing into people. We're the ones that are investing into our communities, investing into society. And we should be, depositing rather than looking to withdraw. Now, like, we can withdraw at times, like, obviously, like, there has to be, that's why they call it currency. It has to flow and everything like that. Like, we need to take, with you, Dr. Rod, I know that I try to invest in you as much as I can in you, but I know that I withdraw as well. We need to. We can't just constantly give, otherwise we become empty. But I think too often we look at what the world owes us and what we can get out of a situation. If, like, COVID happens, and what can the government give me? And, or like, going through drama with people are like, oh, what can I get out of this deal? And what can I benefit from this? while yes, we should still be always looking at, obviously how we benefit from things, we have to, to be leaders, we have to look at how, our organizations can grow and everything. But I just really thought it was really, could you imagine if all leaders were just looking at a situation saying, you know what, I want to make sure that I'm being net positive on society, that I'm investing, that what I do contributes rather than takes away.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Yeah, absolutely love it. I think the best epitaph we could ever wish for really would be for someone to write, the world is a better place because so-and-so actually lived in it.
Yeah.
I think that's the way to go.
That's great. Hey, you've just watched an excerpt from the On the Cube Leadership podcast. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If it challenged your leadership or inspired you in some way, put a comment below. And if you want to watch the full episode or more content like this, check out our channel. And hey, consider subscribing while you're there.